Hey y'all, I'm Hope, and today I am hauling all of the books that I bought between April and June. I have quite a few here, and I just want to apologize in advance first, actually, that you may hear some fan noises in the background. I was going to turn it off, but it would be like a million degrees in here if I did that, so we're not doing that, and I just apologize that you're going to have to live with that for a little bit. But this is my second quarterly haul for 2022, and my idea in doing these was that I would use this as an opportunity to kind of check in and see how many books I was adding to my TBR, see if I was managing to read the books that I was buying. That was kind of the idea here. I just am going to go ahead and say that I read like none of the books that I bought in the second quarter. I have a ton of new books on my TBR. I don't remember the numbers anymore, so I'll just like put them on the screen somewhere, the start and end number for the quarter, but I just know it grew like 20 books or something. There was like 20 new books on my TBR. So this was kind of a fail on that, but I'm just gonna like, accept that and move on. And instead, I'm going to be really excited that I do have all of these very exciting books that I get to look forward to. So ultimately, it's not a bad thing. I just did not do the thing I meant to do. So it's fine. But anyway, I think let's start with the ebooks. That makes the most sense to me, so I can just do all of the like sticking photos in at the beginning of the editing process. So we're trying to be nice to Editing Hope, and we'll just start there. And then after that, I have in no particular order, a large stack of all of the physical books that I bought. So, find my phone here, got my list. So the first book that I got is Of Charms, Ghosts, and Grievances by Elliot de Bedard. This one was a pre-order for me. I pre-ordered it like several months ago, all the way back in February. I was very excited for this book. It came out at the end of June. So this was actually one of the last books that I got. But this is the second book in a spin-off series she's writing from her Dominion of the Fallen series. This one's called Dragons and Blades, and it is a fantasy mystery series following this couple, Tuon and Asmodeus, who are a dragon and a fallen angel respectively, and it's about them solving mysteries together. And a lot of the books in this series, well, I say books, there's two of them. This is the second one. The books in the series kind of have the mystery going on, but they're also like dealing with some of the conflicts in Tuon and Asmodeus' marriage. I got Rolling in the Deep, which is a prequel to Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. This is the story of the Addergatus, which was a ship carrying a mockumentary crew that then went missing, and Into the Drowning Deep, the full novel, follows a crew that goes out to figure out what happened, but this is the story of the Addergatus. This is one of the few other books on this that I have actually already read, and I enjoyed this, but I actually like the full novel better. So on the whole, I'd say skip this one if you're gonna read either. Just read the full novel because I think it's better. But if you are really curious what happened to the Addergatus, like, it's worth a read, I think, because it's pretty short. Then I got Into the Vanisher's Palace by Elliot de Bedard. Again, I really like her books, and several of her ebooks were on sale, so I picked up a few of them. But this one is a Beauty and the Beast retelling about a scholar who ends up, I believe, being sold into servitude in a dragon's palace, and she's working as a tutor for the dragon's children, and it's a Beauty and the Beast romance story. Then I got Penance by Kanae Minato. I just read Confessions last month maybe, or the month before, and thought it was absolutely wild, but also just like really interesting, and the way that Kanae Minato writes is so jarring, but like in a good way. Like, clearly that's the purpose of it. I thought that was really interesting, and so I wanted to read her other book, Penance, and I believe this one follows a mother whose daughter is killed after her friends leave her with a stranger in the park, and so it's the mother's revenge on these girls like years later as she's blaming them for the death of her child. Then I got Possession by Katie Lowe. I think this is called The Murder of Graham Catton in the UK, but this one is a story that I don't remember much about it, but I'm pretty sure it's about a woman who, like, years ago her husband died and she was accused of the murder, and I think ultimately found not guilty for it, but now it's following like a podcaster who's looking into the situation and thinks that maybe things aren't as they seem. So I think that sounds really interesting, and I have been enjoying podcast books lately. Like, I've just recently discovered this like thing with books that are podcasts or that are about podcasts, and I think that I'm really enjoying those. It's been kind of fun to see how that podcast element gets weaved in, so I am looking forward to reading this one. I haven't been reading a whole lot of just like straight mysteries and thrillers lately, so I don't know when I'll get to it, but it just sounds so interesting and different as a thriller, because I haven't read any thrillers yet that have that like extra kind of multimedia element. Then I got The Citadel of Weeping Pearls by, say it with me, Elliot de Bedard. This one is in her Zuya Universe series, and I don't remember anything about this. I just know that I've read other books in this series, which are like each standalone novels in the same kind of setting, and I really liked both of those because I read The Tea Master and the Detective and Seven of Infinities, both set in the same universe. So I really like those. I don't even care that I don't know what this one's about. I'm gonna read it anyway, and I'm probably gonna love it anyway because I really enjoy all of her books, and yeah. And then I got Daughter of the Moon Goddess, which I've been hearing a lot of good things about. I believe this is a fantasy that is it's a retelling of a Chinese myth, although I cannot remember the name of the myth at the moment. I should have looked it up beforehand, but I forgot. But this one, I've heard so many good things about. I don't think I've seen any negative reviews for this, and I've heard that the writing is really kind of lush and lyrical, which I kind of like, so I'm interested to see how I feel about this one, because I don't know anything about it beyond that. And then I bought Dark Rise by C.S. Paquette, which I had seen reviews saying it was basically like a really tropey YA fantasy, but a really well done version of a tropey YA fantasy, and I think based on the description it sounded like it was kind of a urban fantasy-esque thing, like it's got some elements that are set in contemporary London, so I'm curious to see how that goes. Or maybe it's not contemporary London, maybe it was like 1800s London, but I think there were like parts of it that were set in our world, so I am curious about that, and I usually enjoy that in fantasy stories, so I just kind of picked this one up on a whim. Again, it was on sale, and also I got an ebook credit because I bought a new Kindle because my old one was no longer holding a charge very well. So I had some monies to spend. Similarly, I then picked up Far From the Light of Heaven by Tade Thompson, which is a sci-fi murder mystery, I believe, and that's one of my favorite that's one of my favorite genres. My God, I can't speak. I love any kind of like fantasy or sci-fi murder mystery, so I kind of picked this one up on a whim too, just because I was like, hey, that sounds fun. And then I also picked up, kind of in the same set of things, I picked up The Bladed Faith by David Dalglish, which I believe is an epic fantasy that reminded me a lot of Dishonored when I read the description. It's about this guy who's like, he's a prince, and then his parents are killed by a group of invaders that come in and take over, and then he's, I believe, raised in the invaders' like kingdom, or is like held captive or something for a very long time, and then ultimately freed by a group of rebels who want to use him to recreate kind of a symbol. I think it's a character called like the Vagrant or something, but it's like a feared assassin character. It was very Dishonored vibes. It reminded me a lot of like Corvo and Dishonored, which, see my little Dishonored Funko Pop there. But yeah, that's one of my favorite video games, so I thought this sounded like it was going to be a lot of fun. And I also saw that, I think it was Booked and Busy really liked this book, and I'm always intrigued by her reviews. Just the way she talks about books usually like gets my attention, and I'm always intrigued to pick up the things that she says she likes. So I am really curious to see about this one, because I think I'm gonna really like it just on the basis that it sounds like it's similar to one of my favorite video games. Okay, we finally got to the end of the ebooks. This last one was The Foxhole Court by Nora Sakovic. This is a book that I think is one of those, it's, you either hate it or you love it. And I bought this because I have a group of friends who we have this book club. It's not really a book club, but it's like this group where if they want to know about a book, but they don't want to read it themselves, they tell me about it, and then I read it. And it's usually stuff that has like, it's what we call cursed books, so it's stuff that has like all 1 stars or all 5 stars, like there's nothing in between. And this is definitely falling into that category. This is one of the few that I have already read, and I get why it falls into that category. It's a very strange book, but I picked it up for that reason, and have already read that one. Okay, look through one more time. We have actually finished the ebooks, so now Editing Hope can have a rest from adding pictures to everything. And then these are all my physical books. These are just in no particular order. They're just kind of here. So I'll start with Moriarty the Patriot, Volume 2. This is the continuation of a manga that I've already started. Volume 1 was weird. That's about all I really remember about it. It's not a super memorable story, but this is basically like an origin story for Moriarty from the Sherlock Holmes canon. The idea being, like, what if Moriarty originally started out with good intentions to help people, and what would that look like as he became the Napoleon of crime? So I think this is a really interesting premise, and I do remember that the first volume was really interesting. It's like a vignette, or like a series of vignettes of different kind of in chronological order of different time periods of Moriarty's life, with the occasional flashback to his past that kind of gives us his motivation. But Moriarty basically, it feels very strongly about fighting for the working class and helping people who are in poverty, and he very much hates like rich people and people who are capitalists, essentially, and he's trying to kind of knock them down a peg. So it's like vignettes of him encountering various like asshole rich people and knocking them down a peg, just kind of giving them a taste of their own medicine. And I thought it was really fun. It was very strange. Again, I don't remember a lot of it, but I have not read it in a long while, so I may need to go back and reread parts of the first volume to kind of remember what was going on. But I am curious to see how it goes in this, because it feels like he's already taken a really dark turn by the end of the first volume, and I think there's quite a few, so I'm curious to see like how his corruption arc goes, since it already seems to be pretty dark, so I don't really know where it can go from there, basically. I'm gonna be throwing books, Pumpkin. You better stay out of the way. Oh, my cat is pacing through here. He's a little sad he can't be on the book table. He likes to be on the book table. Up next is a nonfiction. This is Entangled Life by Merlin Sheldrake. It's a book about fungi, and I want to read it because, one, a friend of mine read it and said it was really good, and two, I know it inspired a horror book by one of my favorite authors, which I have not actually read yet, but I am hoping to get to it soon. Actually, I'm thinking it would be fun to like read this alongside that, just to have like the inspiration and then the book itself. Next up, I've got a horror book, Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reed, which is a gothic retelling of the juniper tree. And I just think this sounds fantastic. I also have The Wolf and the Woodsman somewhere over here, which I haven't read yet, but I've heard so many good things about Ava Reed's writing, and I think that this story is just going to be really fascinating. I don't know much about the juniper tree, although I remember when this book was announced, I actually went and looked it up so that I would know what this was about. But I'm really curious to see how she uses that story here, and I know that a significant portion of this book is supposed to be about a survivor of abuse, and so I am interested to see how she tackles that topic as well. So, very excited to get to this one, and this may be one of my favorite covers that I've gotten so far this year, because this art is beautiful. It's by Marlo Loon, I think. Yes, Marlo Loon. So I love their art, and I think this is a beautiful cover. Then we've got The Grief of Stones by Catherine Addison. This is one of my most anticipated books of the year, and one of the ones I have read. So I really enjoyed this one. It's the second book in the Cemeteries of Amalo series, which is a spin-off series from the Goblin Emperor following Thara Kalahar, who is a witness for the dead. This book is just a weirdly warm book. Like, the world that these books are set in is really dark and fucked up, but both the Goblin Emperor and the Cemeteries of Amalo books seem to be about authority figures and people in power wanting to make things better and like doing everything in their authority to, or everything in their power to try and improve things for people. And so that's the thing I think I really like about these books. And I also just really like Kalahar as a character. He's very kind-hearted, but also very sad in a lot of ways. So I think he's just like an interesting, complex character, and I love reading about him, and I'm really hoping there's going to be some more in this series, because I think where this one leaves off, it kind of leaves some space open for there to be more stories, and I would love to read more in this world. Then we've got Portrait of a Thief by Grace D. Lee. This is another one of my most anticipated. I have not read this one, although I have started it. There's a bookmark right there. I'm about 60 pages in, and then I hit a book slump, so I just didn't read very much for a little while there, and I am hoping to get back to this one soon, but I just don't know when I'm going to do that. I'm about to start grad school, so it's probably going to be a while before most of these get read. But anyway, was very excited about this. I know it's a heist story, but it's more on the literary side of heist stories. It's more about the characters and their identity as Chinese Americans and how each of them relates to that part of their identity. And yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting, and I was really enjoying the writing in the part that I had read. I do think some of the reviews I've seen that say that the character voices feel a little samey is true. I think that, is it Lily, who's the driver? I believe so. Yeah, Lily Wu. I think that her voice was the most distinctive to me. I do agree with there being a little bit of sameness here, but I also think that this is, in the part that I've read, quite strong for a debut. Like, I really enjoy the writing, and I think it's a really interesting concept. So I am looking forward to finishing this, and I, based on this experience, like, so far, at this point, would definitely want to read more from Grace D. Lee. Next up, we got a series, because I've got Dreadful Company, and grave importance, which I'm trying not to drop. These are the second and third books of the Greta Helsing series, which I read Strange Practice earlier this year and absolutely loved it. It's got some found family stuff in it. It's an urban fantasy set in London about Greta Helsing, who is a doctor for the undead and for monsters, and it's about her like interactions with this kind of unseen side of London, and she ends up having to solve mysteries to help save her patients. And I just think that's really fun. And the little friend group, how many times can I say and? The little friend group that Greta forms is adorable, and I love that they're all very competent in very different ways, and they really lean on each other's strengths in a way that I think is realistic and is a little bit less frustrating for me than some found family kind of groups are, or like friend groups in books. I think there's a tendency for characters to be kind of like, oh, well, I have to do this on my own, whereas these characters very much like rely on each other and have strong friendships, and I really enjoy that element of it. Then I've got Elektra by Jennifer Saint. I forgot the author's name for a second. This is another one of the kind of mini feminist retellings of mythology that have come out lately. This one is about the story of Clytemnestra and Agamemnon, but from the perspective of the women, so Clytemnestra, Elektra, and also I believe Cassandra is in this one. So I'm interested in reading this in part because I took an English course in preparation to apply for grad school, and in that course I was taking a literary theory course, and in that course we were reading this theorist who actually talks about Clytemnestra, and like part of her theory was basically saying, if you took, for example, the story of Clytemnestra, how might that story change and what would it look like if you looked at it from her point of view instead of Agamemnon's. So I thought that was really interesting that somebody actually did that. I think it's Luce Irigari, who is the theorist that we were reading, so if you have any interest, like definitely look her up. I think she's really interesting. But yeah, I thought it was cool that somebody had actually like done that, and so I wanted to read this kind of in that context. Then we've got yet another Elliott David Ard book, which is The House of Sundering Flames, which I picked up at the local used bookstore because I was super surprised to find the UK cover in stock there. My neighbor just went by in a very loud convertible, alright. Anyway, this is the UK cover, and I have the UK cover of the first book somewhere up here. And yeah, I was just surprised to find it locally, so now I just need to get the second book, which I think I'm probably going to order online. But I am looking forward to reading this. This is the Dominion of the Fallen series, which I have not gotten to yet. And then we've got The Prince of Mist by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. This is, I believe, a gothic story about a family who moves into a haunted house. And that's all I know about it. My cat is, like, fascinatedly watching me. Let's see if I can, like, turn you guys and... Pumpkin, you want to say hi? I can't actually see where you're at, buddy. Oh, there you are. Hey. Can I say hi, bud? You look very concerned, although that's like your permanent expression. Yeah. Hey, buddy. Okay. Zoom back out so you're not quite so zoomed in on my face there. There we go. Pumpkin really likes to hang out with me when I'm filming. Actually, Elwood does too, but he's elsewhere. He's across the room investigating over there. Alright, next I think it's also gothic maybe. This is the Sundown Motel by Simone St. James, which I know almost nothing about other than I know it's about a haunted motel and it's got 2 timelines. And that's it, but I keep hearing good things about this author, and I thought it would be worth picking up because I also found this one at my local bookstore, or my local used bookstore. Got Cherish Farah by Bethany C. Morrow, which is a thriller. I believe it's about 2 black girls who live in the same neighborhood, and it's kind of a wealthy, gentrified, mostly white neighborhood. But one of the girls lives with her parents, who are black, and the other girl lives with her adoptive white parents. And the first girl is Cherish, I believe. No, the first girl is Farah. I keep getting the girls' names turned around because I haven't read it yet, so that was probably why. Farah kind of comes up with this plot when her family has to move out of the neighborhood to stay with Cherish for a while and stay with Cherish's family. And once she gets into their house, things turn out to not be quite what they seemed. So I think this sounds like it's going to be really tense and really spooky, and I'm just really excited to read this. I haven't heard anybody talk about this particular book, but I have heard some people say they liked her other books, some of the YA fantasy that she's written. Actually, I was kind of hoping to read that one for Summerween if I participated, and then I was in a reading slump, so it's not happened. Then we've got Our Lady of Mysterious Ailments by... I'm getting my words so mixed up today. Our Lady of Mysterious Ailments by Teal Huchu. This is the second book in the Edinburgh Nights series, which is an urban fantasy series that, as far as I can tell, seems to be set in a kind of dystopian near future kind of setting in Edinburgh in Scotland. And it follows Ropa Moyo, who is a ghost talker, and she's like dropped out of school to be a ghost talker and support her grandmother and her little sister. And I just loved the first book in this series. It's so much fun. It's really spooky and scary in a really fun way, but also I love the way that like Ropa's kind of snarkiness and just her tone filters through everything in this book. It's like narrated by her, and I just love her tone and the way that she like talks about the world and thinks about the world. And also she's got some really cool friends that I also really liked. So I just really enjoy everything about this. I think these books are really fun, and I'm really looking forward to reading this one. This is another one I was hoping to read for Summerween that I then was not able to get to because I have had exactly zero motivation to read. Then I've got These Violent Delights by Micah Nimmerever. This is dark academia. I know almost nothing about it beyond that, other than it's about two boys and like an obsessive relationship they get into. And I've heard a lot of good things about this book. I've also heard a lot of terrible things about this book. It seems a little cursed. It's a little like you either love it or you hate it. But I am curious to see kind of which side of that dividing line I fall on. We've got All Her Little Secrets, another one I have started but not finished because of a reading slump. This one is, I believe, either a mystery or a thriller. But it's about a woman who's a lawyer, and she's been having an affair with her boss for like a long time. And then one day he turns up dead, and she finds his body, and then she turns around and leaves. And things start to go a little bit weird and sketchy from that point forward. She's the only black lawyer working at this firm, and immediately after her boss's death, she's offered his job. And so it seems like maybe there's something else kind of going on beyond this, behind the scenes. I'm going to do these next two together. So I have Justice of Kings and League of Liars. These are both books, one adult and one YA, about fantasy lawyers, and that's why I bought them. End of story. Then I've got Heaven Official's Blessing by MXTX. This is a prince who ascended to godhood and then angered the gods and was cast down, and he keeps like ascending over and over again, and then he's being sent to the mortal realm to hunt ghosts and things, and he ends up being accompanied by a charismatic man that he meets and isn't quite sure what that guy might be hiding. Then I've got The Jade Setter of John Loon by Fonda Lee. Why did I forget that name too? I don't know. I really love the Greenbone Saga. I'm in the midst of Jade War at the moment, so I am not reading this one yet, but I am hoping to get to it soon. But this one is a prequel story about a jade setter in John Loon. And that's all I know. So we're just going to move on. And we've got When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. This is one I picked up on a whim. I was in the campus bookstore at the university that I work at, just kind of meandering because a friend of mine was getting ready to graduate and I was waiting for it to be time to go to her graduation. So I picked up this book. And this one is about kind of an alternate version of our world. I think it's kind of set in the 50s or shortly thereafter. But it's after the 50s. But it's a world where women occasionally turn into dragons and eat their husbands and disappear. And in 1955 in this world there was an event called the Mass Dragoning, when like hundreds of women became dragons and disappeared. And like it's a big cultural thing that nobody wants to talk about. And it follows a young woman living in this world who I believe two of her aunts, or like two of the women in her family, were a part of that mass dragoning. So it's about kind of that and how that impacts her as well. Penultimate book here is The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas, which is a gothic story about a woman who, escaping from, I think, the aftermath of the Mexican Revolution. Is that Mexican War of Independence? I was going to say Mexican Revolution. That is not correct. the Mexican War of Independence, and fleeing from that, she marries this man and moves to his estate despite everybody around her being like, no, don't do that. And she gets there and things are not as they seem, and she ends up teaming up with a witch priest to figure out what's going on. And that just sounds like a lot of fun to me, so I am really looking forward to that one. That's another one of my most anticipated releases. And then the last physical book we have here, because I've just remembered an ebook I need to mention, The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. I'm not counting this as an addition to my own TBR because I actually already owned a copy of the indie published version. This just happened to be the March pick for the Fairy Loot adult box, which was also the only month that I got it because I was not that interested in the following 2 months picks, and I didn't feel like spending the money on it. So I did get this one, but then I immediately canceled. Lastly, the ebook I've just remembered that I really need to mention is that I have been given an ARC. I was not expecting that. I requested one on NetGalley, and I was like, what the fuck you mean I got an ARC? I got The Hunter by Jennifer Herrera, which is being published by... This would be good and important information to have on hand, wouldn't it? I didn't look it up beforehand because I just remembered it. I can't find it. I'll put it on screen somewhere when I look it up later while I'm editing. Anyway, this is a story about a small town cop who's been living in, I think, New York City for several years, and she's just kind of been disgraced. She's lost her job and decides to move back to her hometown where her brother and her uncles all still live, and a series of murders crops up, and she decides to try and investigate and see if she can figure this out and use this as an opportunity to kind of revamp her career and get things back on track. But it also means kind of grappling with the secrets of her small town. I think this is probably a very typical mystery setup. I think I've heard similar setups a number of times, but this one is a debut, so I did want to give this one a chance. And also, I just enjoy these kinds of small town murder mysteries with like the person coming back from the big city and then having to deal with like the adjustment to small town life again. I always think that's a fun time. I enjoy those kinds of stories. Being from a small town myself, I get it. So yeah, I am thinking this is going to be a fun one, and I'm looking forward to reading it. It comes out in January of next year, so I will probably read it a little closer, or at the very least I'll have a review going up closer to that time, but be on the lookout for that in the nearish future. I don't know, time is weird, but I did just want to mention that one, so thank you to the publisher for the ARC. Those are all of the books that I hauled in April to June. There's a fucking ton of them. I've read very few of them, and I'm about to start grad school, so I'm probably not gonna get to them anytime soon, but it's fine. I'm really not worried about it, and I just like having a good selection of books on hand so that I always have something that fit my mood, unless I hit a reading slump, because that does happen. But, you know, when I do want to read, I like having a lot of options, so really, I'm not mad about it. It just didn't quite go the way I meant it to go. But if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I'd love it if you would leave an emoji. Let's leave a book stack emoji because there were a lot of books in this video. But yeah, so if you made it this far, again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.